Would you like to learn how to make a high-quality cheese slice and melted cheese at home?
Well, today on WTF, we're going to show you how to use sodium citrate and sodium hexametaphosphate to turn any cheese into a sliceable cheese slice and a cheese sauce. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen. I'm Chef Scott Guerin.
And I'm Janie Wang, one of the owners of Modernist Pantry. And here on WTF, every week we talk about really unique ingredients, techniques, do demos, and show you new recipes that you can get started with in your own kitchen. So remember, subscribe and ring the bell. You'll get notified of our content. It comes out every single Tuesday. And today we're really excited because we're going to be doing a follow-up to our very first WTF ever, which was all about sodium citrate. And it's hard to believe it's been 2 years since that day, but we are super excited that we thought we would do a deep dive into sodium citrate, because when we first started with WTF, we didn't have all the recipes, we didn't have all the demos, but now we do, so we thought this would be a great opportunity to share with you some of our favorite things to do with sodium citrate. And Scott, maybe to start with, for anyone who's missed episode 1 of WTF, what exactly is sodium citrate and how is it commonly used?
So sodium citrate is the salt from citrus fruits. It's derived from that so that you can use it in many different applications. One of the most common one is to buffer acidity. So you can add it to something that's too acidic and you'll raise the acidity or raise the pH so that an ingredient can work. Mm-hmm. This is most commonly found in like spherification. But its second and probably the most popular purpose is with cheeses. So what it does is it keeps the protein and the fat together. It emulsifies them so they melt evenly. And you may notice it, especially right here. These are two of the exact same cheeses. One is made with a sodium citrate film on top, but you can see, and they're both heated, and this melts evenly, whereas this turns into clumped proteins and separated fat, and even some separated milk solids in the bottom of it. So it really helps keep it nice and creamy, nice and smooth, so that you can use it in tons of different applications, even to nachos. If you have ever had Velveeta cheese, this is the same way that you would make something like that. It's just an easily meltable cheese that you can make at home, but the best part about this is you can use pretty much any cheese you want.
Yeah. And I think one of the questions that we've gotten over the years is, so there's a second ingredient, sodium hexametaphosphate, or SHMP for short, that's commonly used with sodium citrate. And I think sometimes people are not clear, like, why do we need it? Why can't we just use one? Can you talk a little bit about the, the role that these two ingredients play together?
So that's a really common question. With just sodium citrate, you're going to get something like this. You'll be able to make a nice smooth cheese, and you can get something that's about this firm. If you can see, I can leave my fingerprint in that cheese. And these are both Gouda. These are both aged Gouda, so a really hard cheese, a really crumbly cheese, not something that you can naturally slice. But when I add sodium hexametaphosphate, I can turn it into a much more firmer finished product.
Okay.
So when I add that SHMP, I'm going to be able to have something that is firm and sliceable. And that's a really big part of what sodium hexametaphosphate does, because people see the recipes and they go, well, why do I need both? If they're both emulsifying salts, why do I need both?
Right.
So they both do different things in the final product. And the amount of SHMP, sodium hex, whatever you want to call it, is so small compared to the amount of sodium citrate. It's really just there to clean up a few of the calcium molecules, because that's what sodium hexametaphosphate does, not to get too scientific, and then it allows the bond to be greater between the fat and the protein. Okay. So you'll end up with something like that without it, and then something that is much more firmer, sliceable, and easier to handle. Even something like Brie, we're able to make cheese slices out of a Brie.
Yeah, and that's really neat. And I think one of the fun things is the ability to make American-style cheese, but out of like high-quality, good cheeses.
Yes.
Is that something that you're going to show us today?
Yeah, so we just have some regular aged cheddar that's able to be shredded. We didn't purchase the the already shredded cheese has a little bit of microcrystalline cellulose, and sometimes with that it'll make it not as stringy as something that like just a block of cheddar cheese. So I always kind of suggest use like a block of cheddar cheese that you can shred to make your own, rather than use like the bag of already pre-shredded. Okay. So here I just have a little bit of milk. I'm just going to whisk it up. You never want to heat it too much to where it's scalding on the bottom. I'm going to add in my sodium citrate, a little bit of sodium hexametaphosphate, and a little bit of salt. And the reason why I add the salt is to account for the amount of milk that's in here. So if I'm adding cheese to this milk is not seasoned. Mm-hmm. So I just add a little bit of salt in there. So I'm just going to mix this up. And then, very simply, I'm just going to add in my cheese. And it's that simple. You don't have to use milk if you don't want to. I know people commonly will use like a beer for this, so they can make like a beer cheese for a dip. You can really use any liquid. As long as the sodium citrate is in there, it should work. I would just suggest kind of staying away from some of the more acidic liquids, because something that is too acidic will then start to coagulate the proteins of the cheese more so than they already are. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to keep heating this up, and it'll eventually turn into a cheese sauce. But we can go on to talk about a few other things that we made with this. So this would start as a sauce, and then we'll be able to, cool it down into a firm, sliceable cheese.
Okay, and that's just by pouring it into a mold, nothing else?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I just poured it into a mold. You can use like a silicone pat with any kind of ring mold or anything you want, and then you can just slice it on your own. As long as you have that sodium hexametaphosphate and use the right ratios, you're going to be good. And that's actually a good point right now, is the ratios of how much you're going to use per the total amount of the recipe here. Mm-hmm. So sodium citrate runs around 3%. Okay. So I always go 3% to the total weight of the cheese, whereas I go about 0.1% to 0.175% of sodium hexametaphosphate. So a really small amount, like so small compared to the entire recipe. Mm-hmm. So if you're making a kilo of cheese, you really only need like 1.75 grams, right? So you can see this starting to come together here. And what we did with something like this is I took it and I made some twice baked potatoes. Ooh. And I took this cheese sauce, so once it comes off here, and then you pour it right into some cooled baked potatoes that have been like 50% scooped out. And when you 50% scoop them out, you fill it with cheese, then you make a nice mashed potatoes, and you pipe it on top, and then of course you put some caramelized onions and sour cream on there. But then when you do the twice bake again, you can open them up, and you get all the cheese that comes out on the bottom. I see a lot of it gooped out already, but you can pop open a twice baked potato and cheese pours out. I think no one's going to be upset about that.
I know. It's like kind of like a soft boiled egg almost.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, just enough. It doesn't need to make a big mess of your plate. And one thing that is important to do, don't scrape out too much, because then it'll just pour through the bottom of the potato. Found that out the hard way. But let's take a look at this cheese. My spoon. You can see just how smooth the sauce is, right? Ooh. Great. Turn that off. Okay. So they don't mold it. Is that also the same type of cheese that you make for your nachos, or is that a different process? No, that's a different process. So I don't put the sodium hexametaphosphate. Okay. This, if I leave it even sitting here, probably by the end of the video, it'll start to be starting to solidify. So if I'm going to make something that is for nachos, right, I'm going to keep out the sodium hexametaphosphate. So even when it's just above, body temperature, it's going to be around this, loose consistency. Eventually will set up in the refrigerator just like a normal nacho cheese. But if I want to, then I can take this. And this is a little bit different because it does have a roasted jalapeno in it that is blended into the cheese. Ooh. But then I can pour it over the top of nachos.
That looks great.
Yes. Right. I'm sure that's going to be a good snack after this. And then with things like the Brie, we were able to make a sliceable Brie, so why not make a Brie sandwich? And when we made the Brie, we actually put the entire, mold on the outside. You don't necessarily have to do that. Yum. But one thing that you can add to help those really soft cheeses and bring them up so that they are a little bit sliceable and are a little bit chewier is add sodium caseinate. And that's just something that you can kind of fortify the cheese with. And the sodium caseinate is the milk, the milk proteins. And the milk proteins will help make a stringier cheese too. So we added that to our sliceable brie. So we made a nice sliced brie and fig sandwich here. So you can do all sorts of different cool things with all different types of cheese that you want. So everything down to goat cheese or things with not much fat in them, you can make a sliceable cheese out of.
Yeah, even hard cheeses like Parmesan?
Yeah, Parmesan. Okay. Even this aged Gouda is very similar to Parmesan, where it's really crumbly, and Parmesan's kind of like the king of crumbly cheese. So yeah, you can make it out of that as long as you use the right amount of milk and then the sodium hexametaphosphate after you loosen it up so it kind of firms back up properly.
Yeah, and as always, you can get all of today's recipes in the links in the description below. We'll have a video coming out in a couple of days on the baked potato itself, which is super fun, and also didn't eat it on camera, but I have eaten it and it is absolutely delicious. So we're really excited to share these recipes with you. If you like them, if you use the sodium citrate and or sodium hexametaphosphate, let us know what you use them. Leave your comments, leave your questions. We love hearing from you. And until next week, from here in the test kitchen, I'm Janie Wang.
And I'm Scott Guerin.
Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell so you get notified when we drop a new video.
To get today's recipes and all of our recipes, remember to go to blog.modernistpantry.com. where you get recipes, ask a chefs, tips and tricks, and more.
And if you haven't already, tell a friend so they know what's going on here at WTF.
And as always, to get any of the ingredients you saw today, you can go to modernistpantry.com to shop.
And until next time, we'll be here in the test kitchen helping you create memorable and magical experiences.